Somewhere off the coast of Indonesia, an octopus is collecting coconut shells. It picks up two halves, tucks them under its body, and walks across the ocean floor on two arms like a person carrying groceries. It hasn't been attacked. There's no danger nearby yet. It's doing this just in case. When a predator eventually shows up, it slides inside the shells and closes them shut like a portable suit of armor it built for itself in advance. That single behavior, preparing now for a threat that hasn't happened yet, is something scientists call foresight. The ability to imagine a future state and act to prepare for it. For decades, we believed this required a brain like ours. Mammals, certain birds, maybe a primate or two. An octopus is none of those things. It's a mollusk. The same broad category of animal as a clam or a garden snail. Soft-bodied, solitary. Most species live less than 2 years. And somehow it's one of the most cognitively sophisticated animals on the planet. The deeper you look into how an octopus actually works, the less it makes sense, and the more it forces you to question what intelligence even is. The coconut shelter isn't an isolated party trick. It's one data point in a pattern of behavior that keeps showing up in octopuses around the world. They've been recorded unscrewing the lid of a jar from the inside to escape captivity. Not randomly thrashing until it opened, applying steady rotational pressure exactly where a human hand would. They've been filmed bouncing objects like a child playing with a toy for no survival-related reason whatsoever. Squirting jets of water at aquarium lights repeatedly, seemingly just to watch them flicker. One octopus in a New Zealand aquarium became infamous for slipping out of his own tank at night, squeezing through a drain pipe, entering a neighboring tank, eating the fish inside, and returning to his own enclosure before staff arrived in the morning. The aquarium eventually had to install motion sensors specifically because of him. Here's the detail that should genuinely surprise you. Intelligence, real, flexible, problem-solving cognition has only evolved twice independently on planet Earth. Once on the evolutionary branch that eventually produced us, and once, completely separately, in cephalopods. The octopus is the strangest possible proof that this happened a second time, because every other intelligent animal we know of, dolphins, elephants, crows, chimpanzees, lives in complex social groups. The assumption has always been that intelligence requires society. You need others to cooperate with, compete against, and learn from. Octopuses are loners. They avoid each other except to mate, and even that interaction is brief and often hostile. No family structures, no social learning passed between generations in any traditional sense. So how does an animal with no social life whatsoever develop a mind this complex? To understand this, you have to look at the octopus nervous system. And once you do, the entire human model of how a brain should work starts to fall apart. In humans and basically every other vertebrate, the brain operates as a centralized command center. It processes nearly all sensory information and sends out instructions through the spinal cord to the rest of the body. One authority, one chain of command. An octopus has roughly the same total number of neurons as a dog, several hundred million. But where those neurons are located is completely different. Only about a third of an octopus's neurons live in its central brain. The other 2/3 are distributed throughout its 8 arms, organized into clusters called ganglia. Each arm effectively contains its own localized processing center, capable of independently executing complex behavior without instruction from the brain. This isn't an exaggeration for effect. Researchers have documented that a severed octopus arm, which will regenerate over time, continues to respond to touch, explore its immediate surroundings, and recoil from unpleasant textures for a period after separation from the body. The arm is processing sensory information and generating motor responses with zero input from the central brain. When you consider how an octopus actually hunts, this design makes a strange kind of sense. They squeeze into rock crevices and probe blindly into holes where their eyes cannot see anything. In that kind of environment, an arm needs to make instant decisions about what it's touching. Food, threat, or just rock without waiting for a signal to travel to the brain and back. That round trip could be the difference between a successful hunt and becoming someone else's meal. So the brain appears to handle the big picture overall strategy, navigation, long-term memory, while each arm independently manages its own immediate tactical decisions in real time. It gets stranger. Every one of the roughly 2,000 suckers across an octopus's 8 arms is densely packed with chemoceptors. This means an octopus doesn't just feel an object when it touches it, it tastes it simultaneously. Every single point of contact delivers both tactile information and chemical information about whatever it's touching, building something we have no real human equivalent for, a constantly updating chemical map of its immediate physical environment, generated entirely through touch. Now look at how it sees. Octopus eyes are camera-type eyes, lens, iris, retina, essentially the same fundamental architecture as a human eye. This is one of evolution's most striking examples of convergence. Two completely separate lineages, split apart for over 600 million years, independently arriving at almost the exact same solution to the problem of forming an image. But here's where it actually improves on us. Human eyes have a structural flaw. The optic nerve has to pass directly through the retina to reach the brain, creating a blind spot where no light-sensitive cells exist at all. It's a wiring mistake baked into vertebrate eyes from early in our evolutionary history. Octopus eyes never made that mistake. Their nerve wiring sits behind the retina instead of through it. The result is a complete, seamless field of vision with no blind spot whatsoever. In this one specific way, octopus eyes are better engineered than human eyes. And they can detect polarized light, the directional angle that light waves oscillate at something completely outside human perception. This lets them spot otherwise transparent prey like jellyfish, and may even allow communication through skin patterns invisible to predators that lack this same ability. Which sets up the single strangest fact about octopus vision. Strong evidence suggests they are functionally colorblind. Stop and sit with that for a second. An animal famous for some of the most precise color-changing camouflage on Earth may not actually be able to see color through its eyes at all. How does that work? The leading scientific explanation is genuinely strange. The octopus's skin itself might be capable of detecting color, independent of its eyes entirely. Researchers have identified light-sensitive proteins called opsins, the same category of photopigment used in the retina distributed across octopus skin. This raises the real possibility that an octopus doesn't need to visually look at the surface it's camouflaging against. Its skin might be detecting that light information directly and triggering the camouflage response without ever routing through the brain or eyes at all. This is a genuinely different model of perceiving the world. We build a visual picture through our eyes and interpret it through our brain. A whale builds an acoustic map of its surroundings through echolocation. An octopus appears to perceive through a combination of taste, touch, and quite possibly direct light detection through its own skin. Intelligence, it turns out, isn't locked to one sensory pathway or one type of nervous system architecture. It emerges wherever a complex enough problem demands a sophisticated enough solution. And the octopus's camouflage system itself is proof of exactly how sophisticated that solution can get. Most people assume the chameleon is the gold standard of color-changing animals. Chameleons shift their appearance by adjusting the spacing between nanocrystal structures in specialized skin cells, altering which wavelengths of light reflect back. The process takes several seconds, and research suggests chameleons use this primarily for social signaling rather than camouflage. Octopuses use an entirely different and dramatically faster system, built on direct muscular control rather than slow structural adjustment. Their skin contains 3 distinct layers of specialized cells. At the surface sit chromatophores, elastic sacs filled with pigment, each one surrounded by 15 to 25 individual radial muscles. When those muscles contract, the sac expands and the color becomes visible. When they relax, the sac collapses and the color disappears. This entire process happens in a fraction of a second. Beneath that sit iridophores, which use stacked reflective protein plates to generate iridescent blues and greens through pure structural physics rather than pigment. Deeper still are leucophores, which scatter light to produce white tones. But color alone doesn't make convincing camouflage. Texture matters just as much. Below all 3 color layers is a separate muscular network called papillae that can physically raise sections of skin into 3-dimensional ridges, spikes, and branching shapes. allowing the octopus to mimic not just the color of coral or rock, but its actual physical texture. This raises a question nobody has definitively answered. When an octopus transforms to match a coral reef in real time, is that a conscious decision about color and shape? Or pure reflex, sensory input triggering automatic output with no awareness involved at all? The honest answer sits somewhere in between. Octopuses can be trained to produce specific patterns on command, which implies some level of voluntary control exists. But the sheer speed and complexity of the transformation suggests most of the execution happens automatically through distributed processing, without conscious oversight of every individual chromatophore. We're looking at a form of intelligence that doesn't cleanly fit into our categories of conscious versus unconscious action. And that ambiguity itself is telling us something important about how limited our framework actually is. Beyond the coconut shelter we opened with, laboratory studies have documented an entire range of cognitive ability that extends well into territory we usually reserve exclusively for vertebrates. Octopuses readily learn to open screw-top jars, defeat child-proof container locks, and solve multi-step puzzles requiring sequential actions. They demonstrate individual recognition of specific human caretakers responding warmly to people, who have treated them well in the past and with visible aggression toward people who haven't, which requires memory not just of past events, but of the specific identity of who was involved. One study documented something even more remarkable: observational learning. When octopuses with no prior experience watched a trained individual solve a novel puzzle to access food, the observers solved that same puzzle significantly faster than octopuses given no chance to watch first. They extracted useful information just from observing another individual of their own species. That ability is typically associated exclusively with highly social animals. And then there's play. Play behavior is evolutionarily strange because it provides no immediate survival benefit. It costs energy, consumes time that could go toward foraging, and in some environments increases the risk of being eaten. Yet play shows up reliably in animals we already recognize as intelligent cetaceans, corvids, parrots, primates. Captive octopuses have been repeatedly observed manipulating objects in ways that serve no functional purpose beyond the manipulation itself. Combined with the documented nighttime tank escapes for hunting trips followed by a return before morning, this points to something beyond simple problem solving, genuine spatial memory, and multi-stage planning across an extended timeline. So we're back to the central paradox. Octopuses are almost entirely solitary. They don't form social groups. They don't cooperate to hunt together. They don't raise their young in any traditional sense. Females typically die shortly after their eggs hatch, never meeting their own offspring. If intelligence requires social complexity, none of this should be possible. The answer appears to be that intelligence doesn't actually require social complexity at all. It requires ecological complexity. Octopuses are soft-bodied predators operating in environments packed with both prey and threats. They're generalist hunters tackling wildly different prey types in a single lifetime: crabs that need to be cracked open, fast-moving fish that require a completely different capture strategy, bivalves that demand patience rather than speed. Each one requires its own distinct solution. They live in structurally complex, three-dimensional environments, coral reefs, rocky coastlines, kelp forests, that demand sophisticated spatial memory just to navigate, let alone hunt effectively in. And those same environments are full of predators, sharks, eels, dolphins, against which a soft, boneless body offers zero physical protection. Survival depends entirely on evasion, concealment, and extremely fast threat assessment. In other words, the octopus's environment handed it an enormous, constant stream of difficult problems to solve. And when an environment is complex enough, intelligence can emerge as the solution, even with zero social pressure driving it. Here's the part that should genuinely change how you think about intelligence as a concept. We define intelligence using tests built around our own cognitive strengths: verbal reasoning, abstract symbolic thought, long-term planning, complex social cooperation. When an animal performs well on tests designed around human ability, we call it intelligent. When it doesn't, we often conclude it simply lacks sophistication. The octopus exposes exactly how limited that framework actually is. Humans have approximately 86 billion neurons. Octopuses have several hundred million, a real number, but nowhere close to ours. Yet those neurons are organized into a decentralized network optimized for an entirely different set of problems than the ones our brains evolved to solve, coordinating 8 semi-independent arms simultaneously, processing chemical and tactile information from roughly 2,000 individually operating suckers, generating coordinated full body color changes across thousands of chromatophores within milliseconds. Their cognitive architecture is built for their ecological niche exactly as precisely as ours is built for ours. Neither version is objectively superior. They're simply optimized for completely different problems. This has genuine implications beyond just understanding octopuses. For decades, the search for intelligent life beyond Earth has largely assumed alien minds would resemble ours, social, technological, communicating through symbolic language.